As we mentioned, the historic hush money criminal trial of Donald Trump got underway today with the start of what could be a long jury selection process. And joining us now to talk about the trial in general and what happened today in particular is Roy Herrera, former assistant U.S. attorney and the founding partner at Herrera Arellano LLP. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Officially begins with jury selection, none picked. Did that surprise it to you?
Not really, because I think it is going to be difficult to find a jury in this case. I mean, there's a lot of things that are unique about this case. Number one being that Donald Trump may be one of the most famous people in the world. So finding a jury of 12 people that can be fair and impartial, I think could be hard because a lot of people have predisposed views on Donald Trump. As you mentioned earlier, they started off the jury selection with the question of, can you be fair and impartial? And over half the people in the room said they couldn't, so they were immediately dismissed.
So, but what is each side now looking for in a juror?
Well, that's interesting. So what's going to happen now, and we started this today, is the jury selection process, which involves both sides and the judge asking a series of questions to the prospective jurors. Most of the questions today were kind of the normal questions you have at the beginning. What do you do? What's your occupation? How do you consume news? What do you watch? What are your views on sort of general statements or issues of criminal justice? But then they will get to things that are a little bit more specific. Obviously on the defense side, you're always looking for jurors that say are a little bit, let's say, skeptical of government power, right? And so that's the kind of juror I think you're looking for. Whereas the prosecutors are looking for jurors that, really subscribe to law and order and the rule of law. That's in general terms. But I think ultimately all this is going to come back to a political question. And the question is, can they find fair and impartial jurors that don't have political views on this?
Now, and again, I've heard that the Trump legal strategy is always delay. Just delay whenever you can, as long as you can. Is that going to be part of this particular process as well?
Absolutely. I mean, that has been their strategy in this case and all the other cases. He has 3 other pending indictments in other jurisdictions. But even in this case, most of today, at least the first half of today, had to do with a bunch of pretrial motions that the defense had filed, some of which were to try to get the judge to recuse himself, but others were related to evidence that could be at issue in the case, could be allowed in the case. And all of this, I think, was designed to delay the case as long as possible. But we're already seeing how long this is going to take, with the judge estimating that this case could go at least 6 weeks.
How long the jury selection process, you think?
At least days, if not weeks. I mean, I think today, they only got through a piece of it. But I think it's probably going to take a week or 2 at least.
And let's clear up. I'm pretty sure our audience gets it, what this trial is all about. But for those who aren't sure, we hear hush money, we hear porn star paying off this to try to keep secret that. Falsified documents are really the key here, correct?
That's correct. So what he is being accused of, and this is, of course, is a New York State court. So this is a state criminal law. A falsification of business records is what he's being accused of. And it has to do with how he alleged to have hid certain hush payments to a former adult star, Stormy Daniels, through his former lawyer, Michael Cohen. Now, normally, the falsification of business records is a misdemeanor, but what the prosecutor in this case decided to do is charge it as a felony, because his theory of the case is that the falsification of business records were done in conjunction with another crime. That other crime was a violation of election laws, both federal and state election laws.
So the idea of trying to keep this out of the public's eye because of the 2016 election, we'll call it all the way back to 2016, that's where the felony comes in.
Exactly. So the whole timeline here is, if you can recall, back in the 2016 election, there was the Access Hollywood tape that had come out, and there was other allegations coming out of alleged affairs by Donald Trump. And the allegation here in this case is that he paid these hush payments to Stormy Daniels in order to make sure that that case or that allegation didn't come out at the time. But he hid those payments through payments to his lawyer, his former lawyer, Michael Cohen.
Yes, indeed. Who will likely be a witness here?
Likely. And he was even named today in front of the jury as someone who would likely testify.
Yeah. Aren't there a couple of other hush money deals, and like with the National Enquirer we heard about? Are those things, A, do they exist, and B, would they be introduced?
So that was the subject of some of the pretrial motions today. The prosecution and the defense were sparring over whether other allegations of affairs would be allowed in, and the judge actually sided with Trump on this and saying that a lot of those other allegations were hearsay and wouldn't be allowed in. Notably, though, there was a dispute over that Access Hollywood tape itself, and what the judge decided to do is that that tape will not be played in the trial, but a transcript will be made available to the jurors.
Interesting. All right, so Trump's defense. What kind? We've talked about delay, and I imagine denounce as well, because that's where that's again part of the plan. But what is the real plan? As for defense attorneys, what can they do in this case?
I think he is likely to make an argument that the violations that existed, this falsification of business records, were sort of ticky-tack, that basically there were technical violations under the law. As I mentioned, normally those are misdemeanors if they're charged at all. And I think he's going to try to make the jury feel like what happened here was no big deal, and that whether or not it was true that he had an affair with Stormy Daniels, the fact that he classified them a particular way at his business is something that he shouldn't be punished for.
I was going to say no big deal is not the best defense strategy, is it? That means, okay, I did it, but who cares?
It's not usually the best defense strategy, but everything about this is so unusual. I mean, you're going to have, potential jurors. One of the things I think they have to watch out for, even the prosecution, is that you may have potential jurors that want to be on this jury. Most of the time people don't want to serve in a jury, but in cases like this famous, you could run into a scenario where a juror actually wants to be on the jury because he wants to be famous himself.
Right. You think Trump's going to take the stand?
I highly doubt that. I mean, normally, as a defense lawyer, you would tell your client never to do that because it's usually not in your interest. But of course, Donald Trump is a unique person, so it's really going to be up to him no matter what his defense lawyers advise him.
And he was there today. Does he have to? Is he required to be there every day of this trial?
He is required to be there, and in fact, that became part of the discussion today because it turns out he needed to be in another jurisdiction on another case, and the judge reminded him that he needed to be there.
What if he starts acting up? And we heard reports that he was smirking and kind of making faces. I also heard a report he might have nodded off and fell asleep. But I mean, if he starts acting up, what happens?
Well, that's really interesting because this judge's demeanor throughout this process leading up to today, and especially today, is that he's a very no-nonsense judge. I mean, he's a straight-to-the-point judge. I think he warned everyone in the courtroom today that if there was any acting out, that he would either admonish them, hold them in contempt, or kick them out of the room. Presumably, that would apply to Donald Trump himself. So if he does things like that, I think he is going to get admonished from the court. We also have this pending gag order that he is alleged to have violated, which the judge did not rule on today, but it is going to be something that they consider going forward.
Hasn't Trump already attacked, like, the judge's daughter?
He has. And one of the things that also, going back to the jury question that is going to be very unique here, is the question of jury and juror safety. Because ultimately, the judge has made very clear to the defense that the identity of the jurors is not to be released at any point. But of course, we've seen on, I guess it's not Twitter anymore, but on Truth Social, that Donald Trump likes to attack people, including the judge in this case. And so the question is he going to follow that rule going forward?
All right. And the question, of course, is how long, and you're thinking maybe the end of May, somewhere in that. And this is the only trial. This is it. The only one that even goes to trial before the election.
Yeah, that's right. It looks like the other three cases, there's one in D.C., one in Georgia State Court, and one in Florida, are not going to go before the November election. But it looks like, just given the complexity of this case, all the witnesses that might testify, including perhaps Donald Trump, perhaps Melania Trump, was somebody that was named today, that it's going to last about 6 weeks, which would take us to the end of May.
Last question. With all your years in the law and everything you know and everything you've seen, let's say he's convicted of the felonies. I think, let's say, I forget what it was. It's like 4 years max, I think, on each count. Does he go to prison?
See, that's one of those things where it's impossible to predict. We've never been in this situation before. My guess is if he's found guilty, there would be some sort of, either not a suspended sentence, but they would sort of delay sentencing until after the election, because I think the judge is going to be cognizant of the fact that he is the Republican nominee for the presidency. And so we have to sort of play that out. And I think that's actually precisely what Donald Trump is probably actually playing towards, because he knows if he's elected president, it's highly unlikely he ever goes to jail if he's convicted.
Now, we should mention that when the judge said that he would be the one handing down the sentence, that was when Donald Trump reportedly smirked in his journal. This is fascinating stuff. Good to have you here. Thank you so much for your expertise. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.